Top of the morning, Dan and Damie. Congresswoman Cori Bush from St. Louis. You may remember her for her pronouncements over the last 4 days about private security for me, defund the police for thee, that she has received death threats lodged at her by sworn police officers who she will not name, but then in the same breath said it's no big deal, it's being handled.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Uh-huh. She started last week off by staging a sit-in on the steps of the Capitol, staying overnight to protest the ending of the eviction moratorium, which she got extended, even though it's now a matter of litigation, and the judge handling the case in D.C. suggests that she understands there's more than a little bit of political gamesmanship going on here. Oh, boy. If that isn't obvious. She writes in a CNN op-ed, does Cori Bush, I've been evicted 3 times in my life. Once following a violent domestic assault in which a former partner left me for dead. I wish I could believe what Cori Bush has to say. I wish I could take as granted what she has to say. I don't, but leaving a place because you were abused is not an eviction in the sense that we're talking about an eviction moratorium, of course. But being evicted 3 times in her life, she doesn't name the other 2 or describe the other 2.
Well, then did they happen?
Well,
I mean, normally I would believe her too, but now it's hard to believe her.
Well, here's the other thing. Being evicted is not something to brag about. Oh, there's that. Being evicted 3 times is not something to brag about. Oh, the struggles and this and that. So what is the solution? The solution is we eliminate the concept of rent. Why don't we just have the federal government eminent domain everybody's property and pay them out with more funny money? Cori Bush seems like she would be fine with that. So would all of the other leftists who support the extension of the student loan forbearance. Are we ever going to get back to something resembling you pay for those expenses you incur? Foreign concepts like that. For more on this, as well as the recent hysteria over the last couple of days on climate change, we're pleased to be joined again by Andy Puzder, Senior Fellow at Pepperdine University School of Public Policy, former CEO of CKE Restaurants for 16 years. And he also had a career as an attorney, and you might remember former nominee for Labor Secretary as well during the Trump years. Andy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to be here. Great to be here. Thank you.
Extending the eviction moratorium unconstitutionally, but, hey, at least we got it extended. Extending the student loan forbearance for those who are out of college. We're just going to keep extending and keep printing money and hope that Jay Powell can turn the levers just so.
Well, it's really disturbing that President Biden, with full knowledge that what he was doing was unconstitutional, would extend the eviction moratorium, really depriving landowners, landlords, many of whom are minority individuals or who are small business individuals. They don't own much. They depend on this income to survive, and have come to an agreement with the tenants as to what was to be paid. To extend that moratorium really deprives them of their right to own property, which is something that the government simply cannot do. And there's a Supreme Court decision supporting the fact that this eviction moratorium is unconstitutional. So he's really acted contrary to the Constitution with knowledge that he was acting so. And look, they impeached Donald Trump twice for far less than this, certainly on far less evidence. So I hope that Republicans stand up and act on this. I haven't seen much activity from the Republican Party on it so far, but I'm hoping Republicans will stand up. Certainly, they should do something if we retake the House and the Senate in 2022.
They don't want to look bad throwing people out of their homes. But my question is, when did the CDC get into the rent control business? How do they have a say in this?
Well, look, they've empowered the CDC. They've empowered the medical community element of the federal government to the point where it's almost a socialist power structure. They've really put control of much of our lives into the CDC, into the National Institute of Health. They have people scared. They're doing everything they can to limit our individual rights, to limit our economic freedom. things that socialists have been trying to do for decades. They don't let a crisis go to waste, as Rahm Emanuel once famously said.
Oh,
And they're certainly not letting this one go to waste, nor are they allowing it to dissipate.
I think
doing everything they can to continue it.
Yeah, I think we're well beyond where Tiny Dancer used to be, the taking advantage of a crisis. To wit, Elie Mystal writing for The Nation. I come from a tradition in which you sometimes have to violate bad laws by any means necessary. Writing about that in the context of the eviction moratorium. So if that's a violation of the Constitution, because the Supreme Court says so, well, we're just going to have to violate it. The executive's just going to have to violate it by any means necessary.
Which is what he's doing. I mean, he tries to make it look as if it's just good old Joe. He's just trying to do what he can to get this thing extended a little bit to help people. But this is in direct contravention to the oath he took in January to defend the Constitution. And we're taking somebody who really was one of the, I'm going to say least intelligent. One of the least intelligent members of the Senate, the least intelligent vice presidents we've ever had, is now one of the least intelligent presidents we've ever had. And it's acting in a way that's very arrogant, that indicates a real desire to consolidate power at the federal government level and to avoid the constitutional protections we've had for over 250 years. So it's that we need to do something here. The Republicans need to do something. They need to do something serious. And they need to do it soon. Stop agreeing to these infrastructure bills, which are only going to drive inflation, and get serious about what needs to be done in this country, and get serious soon, because we're in bad shape at the moment.
As somebody who ran a big restaurant concern, I'd be interested in your reaction to the sort of stories we're seeing about what might be coming for employees, not just in the hospitality sector, but all sectors. One is you get fired because you won't get the vaccine. Don't expect to collect unemployment. That could be a legitimate challenge to any unemployment benefits as you refuse the vaccine. Two, this from Mercer, one of the large employee benefits consultancy. Employees could start being charged, if they're not fired, up to $50 a month, $50 a month paycheck deduction from your employer for not getting vaccinated. As sort of, this is what we have to do because you won't get vaccinated. We're going to impose a cost on you because of the cost you're imposing on the operation of the business.
I'd say there's two different things going on here. One is private sector companies imposing obligations on employees and on customers. They're also talking about not allowing people into restaurants or gyms that don't have the vaccine passes or proof of vaccination. So there's employers doing it on the one hand, the private sector, and the government doing it on the other hand. Clearly, this is not something the government should be involved in. They don't have the power to do this. They don't have the authority to do this at the federal level. For private businesses, look, they do have the ability to do this. The people that aren't vaccinated are not a protected class under the Constitution, like people, like race or sex or religion. But you have to be careful. There's nobody right now out there. The most valuable thing in the business community is employers. We just had over 10 million job openings last month, which is a historic record and greatly exceeds the pre-pandemic levels of job openings. If you want employees right now, you better be careful what you do, or you're going to lose good people. So I think a lot of employers are implementing these policies because they don't want to be sued. The worst of all possible worlds is you have a large workforce. You don't require that people get vaccinated. A group of people break out there's a COVID breakout at your place of business. And people will get sued. Everybody sues everything. Everybody sues everybody for everything in this country, and Congress provided no protection for employers. So there's some motivation to do this, but you could well lose employees. So there's a downside to it as well.
But with these vaccinations, passports, aren't we resegregating America? I mean, if you think about it, 70% of blacks in New York City can't eat at a restaurant or exercise at gyms, and they can only go where their mayor lets them.
Well, I'd say it's really not segregation. We have segregation in this country based on race, and you can't change your race, no matter what the woke community might tell you. You can't change your race just because you believe you're something else. You are whatever race you're born. With vaccinations, you can change your vaccination status. You can get vaccinated and change your status. So I don't think it's segregation. I think it's unfortunate that it impacts minority communities more than it impacts other communities. But I wouldn't call it segregation. And if you run a restaurant, I can see people running restaurants saying, look, we want people to come in We want them to feel comfortable. We want them to know our employees are vaccinated. We want them to know other customers are vaccinated. And so we're going to put these restrictions in place. But again, you're going to lose a lot of customers. It's not only that 70% of blacks in New York City can't go to the restaurants. That means that these restaurants are losing 70% of their black consumers. So if you're a business, you have to weigh both sides of this. And I think people such as the owner, Danny Meyer, the owner of Shake Shack, has decided that it's in his interest to do this. But other restaurants may decide it's not because they want to keep their customers coming in.
No, that's fine, right? I mean, I completely agree that it's if that's what Danny Meyer wants to do, that's what Danny Meyer wants to do, and I'll go somewhere else other than Shake Shack, no problem. But you're right too. I mean, just to your point, I mean, you see this in the public sector even. There was a story about 150 some odd San Francisco sheriff's deputies who were going to resign en masse if there was a mandatory COVID-19 vaccine requirement. So that would be pretty impactful in the San Francisco sheriff's office. And then also this too, in terms of this, using the cover story of I'm trying to, my lawyer told me, or I'm trying to avoid litigation, to the cover story for being weak, generally speaking, being unwilling to stand for what you believe in some cases. Todd Zawicki, who is a professor at George Mason University in Virginia, he's suing his institution because he had COVID. He recovered. He's got immunity from being having the infection, recovered, and his employer, state institution, requiring vaccines. Vaccination is unnecessary and potentially risky. So he's coming from it the other way too. So it's more complicated than just taking it from one perspective for these employers, including in the public sector.
They have a lot to weigh. They have to weigh what their beliefs and their values are. They have to weigh what's in the best interest of their employees and their customers. I mean, anytime you run a private sector business, you have to weigh a lot of things in determining what actions your company should take. And you can make big mistakes. Coca-Cola made a big mistake with their opposition to the Georgia voting law and supported these woke human resources policies that they put in place. And it's cost them some business. The Olympics made a mistake by allowing these woke protests. Football's made a mistake. I think football's going to be devastated this year with what they've done with the national anthem. They're alienating a significant portion of their customer base. But these are the kinds of decisions that businesses have to make all the time, and it's unfortunate. Look, right now, nobody knows what to do. The Trump administration was very severely criticized for the way they handled the pandemic. But the fact of the matter is they did the one thing that made sense during the pandemic. They put every effort they possibly could into the development of a vaccine, which is really the only way we're going to fight this thing over time. That and herd immunity as people get this and become immune to it. Nobody knows what to do. And you can see this now with the Biden administration that was so critical, that Biden and Kamala Harris were so critical of President Trump and the Trump administration. And Dr. Fauci became very critical. Well, now they're screwing it up now. If Trump screwed it up when he was president, they're screwing it up even more now. They've got the vaccine, and we've still got an outbreak. So nobody really knows how to deal with the pandemic. It's not something that humans can control very easily, and it's not something, even China, which has a very oppressive government and has kept this somewhat under control, if you can believe what they say, and I don't, but at least they claim they've kept it somewhat under control. They're now having an outbreak of this Delta variant, and they're not sure what to do with it. They're locking things down again. Nobody knows what to do. So it's a very, very difficult situation, and I think people were overly critical of the way President Trump handled this. I think he actually did the one thing that made sense to do. And I don't know what Joe Biden's doing to make sense to do. He seems to be at a complete loss with how to deal with this.
Yeah, and I mean, I just comment too is, this is substantially a government failure too in terms of the response. But we've become a culture that is so reliant on the government for everything. So much of the population runs to the government, despite their spectacular catastrophes. And so this is what creates all the confusion, because it's a culture that's so government centric rather than sort of platoons of democracy centric, and it makes a big difference.
Well, there was a very good article in the Wall Street Journal just this morning by Casey Mulligan.
Yeah, exactly.
And one other author talking about how the private sector has really come to the rescue of government as it's made errors repeatedly over the past few decades. And in fact, it was the private sector that thank God for President Trump being from the private sector and relieving the regulatory burdens that allowed the development of a vaccine. But it was the private sector. It was Moderna, it was Pfizer, it was Johnson & Johnson developed the greatest, most incredible vaccines that we have in the world. No socialist country, no other company, no company outside of America came up with an effective vaccine. And now what do they want to do? Well, they want to punish big pharma. They want to punish them for what they've done. They want to release their intellectual property to other nations that were incapable of developing this vaccine. So it really, again, is the private sector coming to the rescue of bad government policy. And that's been repeatedly been the case over the past few decades. It's the private sector, and particularly the American private sector, that's been the savior of the world in instance after instance.
He is the former CEO of CKE Restaurants for more than 16 years, senior fellow at the Pepperdine University School of Public Policy. Andy Puzder, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Dan and Amy, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, I'm Jim Boyd, here to tell you about an incredible cost-saving opportunity you should consider for your building, office, or facility. For 30 years, Boyd Electric has been a local 134 electrical contractor providing quality service and technology. We help businesses large and small reap the benefits of energy-efficient lighting products. Boyd Electric has retrofitted hotels, big box stores, hospitals, and car dealerships, and is a total solutions provider that can serve your needs anywhere in the country. With our no capital outlay shared savings program, you can get 100% financing with customer payments based on an agreed upon share of realized energy savings. Once the balance is paid off, you own the equipment and retain the energy savings. Our partnership with manufacturers and our association with ComEd's energy efficiency programs provides you access to products and programs designed specifically to make upgrading your lighting plan an affordable cost-saving option. Boyd Electric, the experience to retrofit your business with the finest LED alternatives.